it was very convenient. Anyhow, the war ended, as you well know, in 1945, and we started the repatriation of the Polish patriots. I sent everybody off. The authorities didn't want to let me go, said, "You're stupid. Why don't you stay here? We need people like you. You don't have to live here. We'll send you to Kiev. We'll send you to Moscow if you want to. You can stay here." I said, "No, I have to see my parents and my sister. I have to leave." In other words, I made some jokes. I said, "I'll write you a letter." I said, "Don't write us a letter," because the Russians hated to get letters from abroad at that time. This was very
shaky.
It was a shaky thing. So anyhow, with the last, I sent my wife and daughter. I sent up with an airplane. They went to Chozhou. I had to stay behind to wait for some people who came from the district by camel. You know, the last few Poles, I had to get everybody out. And with the last group, which was actually a group, only a family, with them I came to Chozhou. In Chozhou we boarded the railroad, and we had a month's trip through all of Poland. A month's trip. We went straight to the city of Szczecin, today called Szczecin, at that time called Stettin, because it belonged to Germany at that time. The Poles had taken after the war. And we came to that city, and in that city the Poles threw out all the Germans. And I went up with another group of people which were in almost the same boat, similar boat as I was, and I said, "I want to be thrown out of Poland too, because I'm a German."
Yeah.
He said, "You're not a German, you're a Jew, and you won the war." I said, I know we won the war, it's okay, but I don't speak a word of Polish," which at that time was a lie. At that time I spoke already a little bit Polish. I still speak only not too much Polish. And after we were living there about 6 weeks or so,
A few months.
not quite 2 months, I think. We were. They took a wagon and added it to a train, and they let the Jews go to. And so we went through a cordon of Poles standing at the side, and they spit on the Germans. But then we came, the Jews after that, and the Jews, amongst the Jews was your grandmother Frida and your mother Ruth, and me, of course. And the funny thing is, we had very little baggage, but your mother carried only one piece of baggage, which was
Ruti, yeah.
which was a chamber pot. A chamber pot. And all the Poles on the side broke out in laughter.
She was so little, you know. She was little and carried the Nachttopf, you know.
Nachttopf, in German it's called a Nachttopf, in English it's called a chamber pot, because it was her chamber pot.
She was 2 years old.
She was 2 years old, and she went with the chamber pot as her luggage, and we carried a little bit, whatever we had, we carried on. We came, so we made it after a month's odyssey through all of Russia, on that slow train to, not to China, but to the end of Poland. We came to Stettin. We were thrown out from Stettin, as I said, and we were thrown out as German refugees and came into Schleswig-Holstein, which is near the Danish border, Germany. And we came in a...
Okay.
Yes, you can tell your life story in half an hour. That depends how much you want to tell of it.
Yeah.
Because to tell everything of a life story is next to impossible. Because you might...
It would take a lifetime.
You cannot convey to somebody else what you went through. He must have lived through that himself. Otherwise, it's impossible. It doesn't mean much to people who didn't have it. Yeah, I would like to mention something. Before I went to Stettin, I stopped off by the way, and the train went very slow. I and another fellow, we went off, and we went to Chanov, and we went to Auschwitz. And I learned there that my father and my mother, as well as my sister Ruth, were killed in Auschwitz. And okay, so from Stettin, as I said, we came to the German refugee camp, one was called Neumünster, the other one was called
Hasenheim.
not Quatsch, not Hasenheim. In Neumünster, the other was Segeberg. We were from one German camp to the other. And while we were there was a Jewish organization which came out of Palestine. Palestine was still not a Jewish state, but they sent over groups in order to save the Jews or get the Jews together wherever possible, and they took us out of that German refugee camp, and they brought us first into Hanover, then into Frankfurt, and then into Kassel. In Kassel, they opened up a displaced person camp, which was under the auspices of the United Nations, at that time called UNRWA, UNRRA, United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Association. And in this camp, I joined the administration, and they had a program in which they didn't have enough allied personnel to run all of that, so they took from the refugees, from the displaced persons, they took them and made them United Nations officers. And they sent me away to Bad Wiessee, which is near there where Hitler's famous castle was up in the Alps, and I had there about a month or month and a half of instruction. I came back and I became an administrative assistant and an under officer, second class, but we were in American uniform. We were in English uniform at that time. Mm-hmm. They did this to distinguish between the second-class officers in the English zone had American uniforms, and the ones in the American zone had English. It was very confusing. But I became, after a short time, I became director of the camp, and I was permitted. I was a high officer already. I was an American uniform. I have some pictures.
So it was a Jewish camp?
Yeah, it's a Jewish displaced person camp. One was Kassel, which was a former Flak barracks. Flak is anti-aircraft batteries.
Flak, right.
We were stationed there, mm-hmm. and the other one was Mönckeberg, which was a suburban area of very nice houses belonging to Germans, which they threw out in order to make room for the refugees to live there, mm-hmm. for displaced persons. I was in charge first of Kassel, of Hasenhecke, and later on Mönckeberg, and after a while I became sub-area administrator of a total of 4 camps. But it's during that time, again, in that camp, I was at the same time also the leader of the Betal, the at that time illegal organization of right-wing Zionists. And my intention, of course, was to go to Palestine, not to America. But your mother let out a big hue and cry. What am I going to do? I don't know a word of English. I'll be alone with Ruthie, and you will be up there. And it's a war. That's what we are talking about. 1948. Mm-hmm. 1948. And I said, and I have a very good uncle in America, in Philadelphia. The marvelous uncle, by the way. Mm-hmm. His name was Uncle Ben. You should never forget that fellow. The biggest idiot I met in my life, but it's okay.
He got you here, didn't he?
Huh?
He got you here?
No, he didn't get us here. We had documents from everybody. We came under the so-called Truman Doctrine.
Oh, I see.
Truman passed a law in which he permitted so many refugees to come into America. So we really, it was not a matter of being documented by anybody. In spite that we got documents from Uncle Ben and even from my aunt and uncle, which I had here too, and there's several cousins in here. And so that's the way we came to America.
Mm-hmm. Are you glad you came here now?
Am I glad I came in here? Yes, I'm glad I came here. Of course, I'm not 150% American like she is. Mm-hmm. I'm a 90% American.
Mm-hmm. Came with the Marine Tiger.
It doesn't matter what we came in. I came in. Yes, this might interest.
Susanna, because your
Susanna, because 1 year later,
mm-hmm.
your father and grandmother, the other grandmother, came over on the same ship on which we came over,
yeah,
the U.S. Marine Tiger.
Odd story. That's such a. You know, Grandpa, you never finished your Lemberger story.
Yeah, let me go back to that.
Yeah.
Lemberger. I went all through school with the name of Lemberger, Adolf Lemberger. But Hitler Germany did not recognize a religious wedding. My grandparents, that means the parents of my father, my grandfather was Pinkus Lemberger, and my grandmother was Malka, which would be Amalia Goldstein. They only married by a rabbi because they lived in a small, almost all Jewish town, and there was no reason to go to the civil authorities. It was fully recognized. But Hitler didn't recognize it. They only recognized weddings which were done at the Standesamt. Standesamt being where you, if you go to City Hall and you register for a wedding and you get married in there, without church or anything. So they didn't recognize it, and they forced my father to take the name of Goldstein. Which was his mother's name. Was his mother's name, my grandmother's name. But they were, I would say, at that time they were still mild, and they permitted us to have both names in Germany, because I went all through school to Lemberger.
So then you were Lemberger Goldstein?
And then was Lemberger Goldstein, but then the final documents are only issued on the name of Goldstein. I took later on, when I came to the United States, I could have changed the name, of course, but at that time I had another, I think I had another idea which didn't quite sit well with me, that if my kids will go to school with the name of Lemberger, they will call him Limburger, which is a smelly cheese. This was not really consideration, but I took the name, so my full name is Adolf Lem, L-E-M, Goldstein. Oh. I took the Lem just as a middle name, so I became Adolf L. Goldstein, period, that's it. And this was the story of the names.
Of the names. I thought that was interesting.
My son is very upset that I did not take the name Lemberger, because Goldsteins you have here, you can fill 2 telephone books with Goldsteins in here.
Yes.
By the way, the new Chancellor for Education will be most probably a fellow by the name of something Goldstein.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's a front runner at the moment. Since what's his name? Ravitch refused and somebody else refused. So maybe we have known. Well, when I came to the United States, by the way, we had the fellow who's today Morgenthau's office at that time was Nathaniel Goldstein.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Before,
before Morgenthau.
District Attorney?
Yeah, the district attorney for Manhattan was Nathaniel Goldstein at the time. Goldstein is a very illustrious name. You find a Goldstein wherever you go. And after all, what's in a name? A rose is a rose is a rose is a rose.
And tell what you did in the United States. You're not interested.
No, I'm interested.
United States.
In the beginning, furniture, bagels,
No,
at night.
Well,
at night
we became, of course, the first year we came to Philadelphia, because the uncle picked us up from my family was also at the ship. We came over the Marine Tiger, as I said, and it took us about 13 days, and your mother and grandmother were seasick 14 days.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know how they did it.
You saw a wall of water. You know, you walk up and you don't see sky. You see a wall of water. It was a horrible weather.
But the old sailor, Adolf Lemberger Goldstein, that didn't faze me at all, because I already sailed when I was 10 years old with my uncle in Berlin. So I liked sailboats since I was a boy.
So you were in Philadelphia.
So we're in Philadelphia, and in the second week, your grandmother succeeded in having a big fight with her uncle.
A fist fight? Now, come on, now.
You did. You
Come on,
did.
now.
You did.
That's just, what is, I beat him up?
No, a fight.
But don't say a fist fight.
I didn't say a fist fight. You couldn't have beaten him up because he was short and squat. And anyhow.
Well, we didn't get along. With one word, we didn't get along.
We lived in an apartment in his house, which was a slum basically, and we left it and we took an apartment somewhere else, and this was it.
Even worse.
This was the end of the uncle. It doesn't matter if it was worse or not. We were rid of the uncle.
Worse.
And the first job I took, I was a truck driver at night and driving around bagels.
After all that education, after all the high places.
I took the first job I could have because we needed money.
Yeah.
And I was selling dresses in the street.
And she was selling the dresses in the section there where.
I didn't know one word English.
One thing, well, you see, the unfortunate thing is, or the fortunate thing is that we never took one penny from money in support from anybody. We
did it on
we
our
were
own.
never unemployed, we were never on welfare, we were never on anything from the very first day. So anyhow, after a year, it turned out that in Newark, where my aunt owned a house on Hawthorne Avenue, my cousin who lived there moved out and bought their own house, and the apartment became available. At that time it was very hard to get apartments, and they said, I will get that apartment, so I moved over from Philadelphia into Newark.
Mm-hmm.
And in Newark I took the first job that was available, which was somewhere moving furniture, which I did for 1 week, and then it was finished, and then I went to S. Klein, which opened a branch. I don't know if you remember S. Klein department stores. It was a big chain of 14 departments. But at that time, S. Klein on the square was in Union Square in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It was very famous. Everybody loved to shop there, the biggest bargains. And they wanted to open a store in Newark, and they're looking for people. I started as a stockbroker, I became a supervisor, I became a manager, I became this, I became that, I became a buyer. And I worked there about from 1950 to 17 years, and then my friend Sam Winters, which I still knew from Germany, a friend of mine, he worked for an exporter who exported metals, and he wanted badly I should come with him, and I never wanted because I liked my job, which I was in there, but then he made me an offer which I couldn't refuse, and I switched over and I worked for Metal and Residues International Corporation, where I worked from 1967 until the time that I retired.
Are you sad sometimes that your children didn't grow up in Germany and in Europe like you did, or, American education, American values?
That they didn't grow up in Germany?
That they didn't grow up in Europe like you had an education in Europe and your way of life.
I don't know if that has anything to do with it. The education in America is not really that bad. It always depends upon the individual.
Yeah.
I would say that the education I had mostly in Germany was slightly better than the education that people get in today's high schools here. Because
But I mean, that's not really what I'm saying. I'm saying, are you happy that your children grew up in America rather than Europe, rather than where you grew up?
Well, I would say the only thing I regret that I'm not in Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise, no. My second choice after Israel would be the United States, because Jews don't have a place in any country except the country